had always loved old things. Not in the sense that she collected antiques or sorted through her grandmother's chests, but she was drawn to objects with a face. She liked the government, who their owners were, what events they lived through. That day, she accidentally walked into a small antique shop on the outskirts of town. The display case was covered in dust, the door opened with a violin. Inside it smelled of old books, wax, and something elusively damp. She wandered between the shelves, sorting through watches, figurines, boxes of yellowed photographs, when her gaze caught on a shelf at the checkout. There it stood and stood. An old film one, with a metal case darkened by time. It looked massive, heavy, but when Amy picked it up, it seemed to fit perfectly in her palm. "A good find," Vanga's voice rang out. He was an older man, with deep-set eyes and a slight smile, as if he knew something she didn't. "Is it working?" Amy asked. "Oh, there's no... You bet. The film's already in. You can even check it." Amy looked at the camera, confused. "What do you mean? Someone forgot to take it out or didn't have time?" She thought for a second, then smiled. Why not? It would be interesting to see what was left on the old film. She paid for the camera and left the store, happy with her purchase. That same evening, when she got home, she determined its power supply. She lifted the complex rooms, pointed the lens at the bed, and pressed the button. The shutter clicked. She looked through the viewfinder, but of course, she didn't see anything right away. She needed her film. The next morning, Amy took it to the nearest photo lab. When she received the finished pictures, her heart sank. There was something else in the pictures in the room that she took yesterday. In the closet where there was nothing, an old wooden chair appeared. A girl was sitting on it. She was looking straight into the camera. Amy looked at the picture and her insides went cold. It couldn't be. She remembered taking the picture. There wasn't a chair in the room, let alone a person. The girl in the picture was blurry, as if her silhouette was part of an old photo superimposed on top of a new one. She sat still, her face partially obscured by shadow, but her eyes... Amy thought she was looking right at her. She nervously shoved the picture back into the envelope and tried to convince herself that it was just a defect in the film, that the old images could somehow be preserved inside the camera. But deep down, she knew that wasn't true. The next night, she picked up the camera again. She took a few more pictures, one in the bathroom, one in the hallway, one on the street in front of the house. When she got the developed pictures in the morning, she realized that everything had gotten worse. In the bathroom photo, the mirror was fogged up, although the glass was clean when the photo was taken. But the worst part was that her name was written on the fogged surface. In the photo of the hallway, Amy saw a man. His back was to her at the end of a dark passage. But the worst thing was in the last photo taken in front of her house. On the road in front of the entrance, there was a broken glass and a dark liquid spreading. Amy felt a chill run down her spine. This was not the case yesterday. She saw the road in front of the house and it was completely clean. But a few hours later, on her way home, she saw this. Broken glass. A pool of blood. And a minute later, she heard sirens. There had been an accident at this very spot. Just like in the photo, Amy felt a chilling fear. The camera showed the future. But what if this future could still be changed? Decided to check. The next day, she took another photo, this time on the street near the bus stop. When she received the photo, she felt a rush of heat. The photo showed a crowd of people, just like in reality. But one person was lying on the ground. Someone was standing next to him, bending over him, and in the distance, ambulances were visible. Amy felt sick. She decided to stay at the bus stop and keep an eye on everyone who was there. If she saw anyone who looked like the one in the photo, she would intervene. The hours passed, but nothing happened. The crowd gradually dispersed, buses came and went. Amy thought that maybe the photo was wrong. But when she was about to leave, she heard the sound of a blow. One of the men passing by suddenly collapsed to the ground. He had a heart attack. She rushed to him, but passers-by had already called an ambulance. A few minutes later, the medics arrived, the same ones that were in the photo. She didn't change anything. The future had already happened. But the worst thing was waiting for her at home. When she returned, she took another photo. It was of her bedroom, and her own body was lying on the bed. Amy stared at the photograph, her fingers shaking. It was of her bedroom. Everything looked the same as it did now, the neatly made bed, the curtains, the half-open closet. But in the center of the frame, lying among the rumpled sheets, was herself. Her eyes were closed, her skin pale, her lips parted, as if she were trying to say something before she stopped breathing. She threw the photograph down on the table, as if that would undo what she had seen. "This is a mistake," she muttered, but the words sounded empty. The camera was never wrong. Every shot, every prediction came true, no matter how hard she tried to interfere. She grabbed the camera and, almost without thinking, pressed the shutter again. Click. She immediately pulled out the film, ran to the bathroom, closed the door, and began developing the image herself. The picture appeared slowly. She saw herself, but this time she was not alone. There was a figure standing behind her. Tall, dark, blurry, faceless. It was approaching. Amy sobbed, turned sharply, but behind her there was only an empty room. Her hands were shaking. She looked at the photograph and saw how the shadow reached for her shoulder. And then the lamp above her head flickered. The room plunged into darkness. Her heart began to pound wildly. Fear gripped her body. A sense of movement hung in the air. At that moment, Amy realized this was not just a prediction. This was a seal. The camera did not just show the future. It created it. A footstep was heard behind her. She didn't even have time to scream. The next morning, Amy didn't come out of her apartment. The door was locked from the inside. When it was finally opened, the room was filled with soft morning light. An old camera lay on the table, and next to it the last photo. It was the same as the previous one. Her bedroom, her body, and the darkness disappearing over her shoulder.